Welcome to Yesterday, Today, Tomorrow. My name is Mariana Cordier, and I am your host. I am coming to you from my home via Zoom. October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Domestic violence affects millions of women, children, and men of every age, race, religion, culture, and status. Abuse extends beyond slaps, punches, and sexual assaults and includes shouting, humiliation, stalking, exploitation, coercion, threats, and isolation. It's the nonstop texting. It's the nonstop demanding victims their whereabouts, constant use of the silent treatment, or making disparaging remarks and controlling contact with friends, family, or work. It is hard for family and friends of victims to understand the difficulty of escaping abusive relationships or reporting mistreatment and having the mental stamina to break the cycle of abuse. The most important aspect of this issue is to encourage victims to seek help, access resources, and provide emotional support. And for our community to consider volunteering and donating our time and money to nonprofit organizations dedicated to helping victims. Today, I welcome two ladies working for an organization dedicated to empowering South Asian women to overcome domestic violence and become self-reliant. My first guest is Priya Kulkarni. She is the president of the nonprofit 501c3 organization known as ASHA for Women. And my second guest is Surkur Ahmed, who is the senior services coordinator in the same organization, and her program provides referrals to appropriate county and state services which have programs in place to assist in all aspects of elder care, including benefits and services. I am honored, ladies, to have you on the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and talk about this so important issue, and in particular, with the aspect of the South Asian community. And Priya, I wanted to start with you because, for the audience, what is the definition, or what are the countries and cultures are we talking about when we refer to South Asia?
Thank you, Marianne, for having us on the show. We really appreciate it. South Asia is a region that basically covers India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan. So those are the countries that we help, and we like to distinguish that from other parts of Asia, like Southeast Asia or other regions in Asia.
That's great. And it's quite a diverse community here in the United States. When you refer to South Asia, there's a diverse religion, cultural practices. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're absolutely right. There's a lot of diversity, but there's a lot of uniformity too. So you will find all the major world religions within these countries. There are people, who are Hindu. There are people that follow Islam. There are Buddhists. There are Jewish people from Jewish heritage and Christianity. So all the religions, the major religions, are represented, in these South Asian countries. But you'll be surprised to know that there are close to, I think, 650 languages with all the various dialects and everything. So that just gives you an idea, of how different it can be too. So while there are many underlying factors like common customs, common food, common culture, there's also differences in language. It almost makes it feel like mini kingdoms stuck next to each other.
That's a really good description. The unfortunate, sad point, though, no matter how diverse we are worldwide, we do share, particularly women, the unfortunate aspect of being victims of domestic violence and having abuse occur. And I'm always fascinated with the misconception that people think that domestic violence is only when you have bruises or a physical injury, when it's so much more than that.
You're so right. Domestic violence is a repetitive pattern of control and bullying that escalates over time. The control can actually take many forms. It could be emotional control, it could be financial control, it could be social control, not being allowed to be in touch with your family, your friends, not having your own personal space and time, your independence. All of these things make up verbal, and verbal abuse, that's another big one. All of these are the non-physical or non-hitting aspects of domestic violence. And it's important to note that this kind of behavior, it's a very, we like to describe it as a very tight spiral that keeps getting tighter and tighter with time, with the intensity and the duration and the frequency getting closer together. So that's a classic sign of domestic violence. And you're absolutely right. It's much beyond just physically being beaten.
Right.
Black and blue.
Right. No, absolutely. I remember I had a client once say, I wish he would just hit me because the emotional and mental abuse was just so bad that it was, for her to say that, it gave you an indication about how impactful it was. What are some of the challenges that your organization faces here in the U.S. and providing services and access to resources for South Asian women?
Sure. So South Asian women in the DC metro area. So we help clients that live in Maryland, Virginia, and DC. The issues are unique for the South Asian culture, or any immigrant culture for that matter, because for the most part, they have left their family behind and they have come to a new place. Whether it's recently or whether it's been 20 years or 30 years, it really doesn't matter. You're leaving behind family and close and your support system. Oftentimes there are immigration issues. They might be under, the husband might have a work visa and the wife might be on an H-4 visa, which is an accompanying visa to someone who has a work visa. If she happens to also be in a domestic violence situation, that it can get terrible for her because she's stuck. She cannot work. She cannot do anything on her own. We have cases where immigration is held as a weapon over the abused party. Like the spouse won't agree to file papers for the wife just because he can do that. He has the power. So language can be an issue. Even though South Asian victims tend to be educated, they have at least 95% of our clients have at least a bachelor's degree. And for the most part, you will find that most South Asian women do know some level of English, because of the colonial past that we share historically.
Thanks to the British, right?
Yes, thanks to the British. I don't know if you want to say
thanks because, in South America, we weren't too happy with the Spanish. But let me ask you with, it's a large community here in the Washington metropolitan area. I don't know if our viewers are as familiar. What are some of the challenges that your organization faces in this area?
So do you mean challenges our organization faces or the clients? Or do you specifically mean the organization?
Well, let's do both. I think they're both important.
Okay. I think the big challenge for us is always fundraising. We're small, we're a volunteer-led organization and very grassroots kind of funded by the community. So that's always an issue for us year to year as an organization. Again, but when it comes to clients, it's all the usual immigrant-related issues that come with it when you're under domestic violence. You're in a foreign place, you're isolated, you are probably fearful of police and immigration, and you might be here legally, but you'll still be fearful because that's held against you. You're scared to call the cops. you're scared to call 911. You're scared to go into a shelter because it's alien. It's different. The food is different. The customs are different. Oftentimes clients, when they're under a stressful domestic violence situation, will forget their English. And we often have local shelters that we have partnerships with all the county shelters and resources that are there. And they will often tell us that when clients come in, South Asian clients will just tend to, or immigrant clients will just go back to their native language because they're so stressed out. So
I can attest to that. I see that with my clients all the time. But I was unfamiliar with your organization. So if someone wanted to reach out and contact you for services or assistance, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. So we have a toll-free helpline for our domestic violence as well as our other program that I'm sure Surur will tell you about. But there is a toll-free helpline. We would require victims or clients to call into that toll-free helpline.
What is it?
So the domestic violence toll-free helpline is 1-888-417-2742. So, that's the first step. And we, view that as being empowered. Just making that phone call empowers you because you're taking your future into your own hands as a victim. So that's the first positive step that you can do, is to call us. And we do stress that we need the clients to call themselves because our aim is to empower the women, not enable them. And it's a very fine balancing act between the two. We really want them to be able to feel confident, to feel empowered, to feel strong, that they can take care of themselves, make decisions for themselves, and go forth.
Well, I know that it's baby steps. If you can accomplish one thing, then the hope is that then you can move on to the next thing and then the next thing. And before you know it, you help them to break that cycle of violence. But your organization is just not limited to that. We have Socorro's very, very patient. You also help out the seniors in the community as well. And you have just started, I believe, a program for them. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the program you have for seniors?
Sure. Thank you, Mariana. The senior program at ASHA for Women not only takes calls on the toll-free helpline to help, seniors who are in trouble, but we started a couple of programs to help with social isolation, when they've come at an older age, to a new country, and they're maybe just need to connect with someone who speaks their language. So we have volunteers who speak multiple South Asian languages, and we have the program. It's called Greet and Meet. It's basically just over the phone. They can connect with someone for a weekly phone call and just have someone to kind of connect with and maybe talk about home and life back home or whatever it is that they are concerned about, or maybe have questions about adjusting to life in the United States. Any kind of things like that. We're also trying to start a monthly virtual kind of senior center set up where they come and join and maybe take a class or have an expert come in and explain something, like obviously things like senior scams, that those are big deals right now, like especially because everyone's home and isolated. It's very easy to answer the phone and start chatting with someone who's actually trying to take advantage of you.
Isn't it horrible? We're in the middle of a pandemic. We have enough to worry about whether we're going to get sick or not. And on top of that, our seniors have to deal with the predators that are out there looking to steal their money or take advantage of them.
Yeah, we see a lot of financial exploitation and things like that. So yeah, we're just trying to have the seniors connect with people who, in a safe space, in a safe environment. And I think that it's important that what really sets our organization apart is that we do have, cultural understanding. We understand where the demographics, we understand the mindset of the people that are coming to us. And we can connect them with people who understand not only their language, but their culture and their way of doing things. And I think especially for seniors, that's important because they're at a stage in their life where they're very like set in their ways, and they want some certain continuity in their lives. So I think
Well,
that's
I think that cultural understanding is super important across the board, you know?
Yes, definitely.
And so my other question to you is, what services do you connect them to that are provided by the county or state?
So that really varies based on when they call the senior services helpline. If they are, in an unfortunate situation of being homeless or abused or something, we would connect them with the Adult Protective Services, the Area Agency on Aging in whatever county they are in. We also connect them with maybe homeless shelters that we know of. We're trying to get them into safe spaces, or just even direct them. Sometimes they just need direction into how do I get help with Medicare or Medicaid? How do I find an attorney, or how do I find a good doctor? Where do I go? What benefits am I entitled to? So those kind of things, like those just kind of very basic questions, and not only that the senior themselves might have, but also their caregivers, because many times, adult children are busy in their lives and they haven't really researched into what their elderly parents need. So they can also just call and ask us, or we can direct them into whatever county programs and services are available to them.
Well, one of the things that I noticed on your website was that there was a mention also of helping seniors with adult children get the adult children removed from their homes if they're being abusive to them. Do you want to address that a little bit?
I think that there was an article on there. I don't know how it relates to U.S. law. That was, from my understanding, there was actually that law was passed in India recently, and it was about because in India they and Pakistan and other places in South Asia, they have a lot of joint family systems where everyone lives in the same house, in the same. You've got your grandparents, your parents, your kids, everyone there. So I think that article that you're referring to is basically based on a new law that was passed in India. And that was just for general information purposes. As an organization, we do not, in the United States, as far as I know, go in and remove adult children.
No. I assume there's a legal process. Yeah, right.
Yeah, there is
well, I thought it was interesting, and the reason I raised it was because in the United States, an owner of the home, even if it's a senior, sometimes they have their kids still living with them in the home because they can't afford or they don't want to, and it's just easier to live at home and under the auspice of taking care of their parent. But then they become abusive. So
right.
It's actually, a struggle here in the U.S. I've seen those cases, and the excuse is that the senior no longer knows what they're thinking or doing, and that may not be the case.
I think in cases like that, especially luckily in the United States, we have Adult Protective Services, and if the senior or a caregiver who is, concerned about a senior, if they call Adult Protective Services, explain the case to them, explain the situation to them, they will investigate and they will, get to the bottom of it and resolve the issue and see, what it is exactly that's going on, and help the senior to the best of their abilities. Because you are absolutely right. That is something that does happen.
So for Priya, I wanted to ask you if I know 501c3 nonprofit organizations are always looking for volunteers. Are there opportunities in your organization to volunteer? And if so, what kind of volunteers are you looking for?
Sure. Yes, we are always looking for volunteers. We look for volunteers who want to do advocacy work and non-advocacy work. So those are the two areas. Advocacy work involves some pretty intensive trainings, as you might expect, given that those are the volunteers that go forth and become client advocates. They need to go through a very rigorous Fairfax County training, which is, I think, 35 or 40 hours. And thereafter, they have to go through an ASHA training. and then and only then, and that too, or it's complicated to be a client services advocate. You really need to have a certain mentality for it. So we have to be a little careful, how we allow volunteers to become client services advocates, because the best interest is the interest of the client, and we don't want to hurt that. So that's one path. The other path of volunteering with ASHA has many options. I mean, there's so many things you could write for ASHA. You could help with grants. You could help with events. You could help set up. You could write the newsletter. There's a whole bunch of things you could do. You could do a lot of outreach. We're constantly doing outreach in the community. So there's lots of options for that too. And the way to volunteer is to go onto our website. You would see the volunteer tab. When you click on that, you have to fill out a form, and you have to email it to the volunteer coordinator. And then as soon as she gets the form, she reaches out to you and sets up a time to talk.
So during these unprecedented times, has your organization struggled a little bit with the volunteering and the fundraising? Has it affected you guys?
So it's really interesting you asked that, because honestly, at the beginning of this year, when the pandemic hit us, April, May, and June, our numbers plummeted. So we had such a huge drop in call volume. And it wasn't just us, it was every domestic violence organization in the country. So guess what? The abused person was stuck at home with the abuser, and they were there constantly. So there was no way for them to reach out without being outed. So basically, we had this huge drop. Numbers have gone up now. Since June and July, we've seen an uptick in numbers, and our numbers have gone up. And it's unfortunately, that I say this, that the numbers have gone up. But on the other hand, I'm glad they've gone up, because that means they're reaching out to us. So they're trying to get help.
Well, so let me ask you, what recommendation would you give to a person who is stuck at home and their abuser's teleworking, so they're home? What are some, if you have any tips or things that they could do to make their situation more tolerable?
Well, the first thing to do is find a way to contact us. So whether that's slipping out when you're out for groceries and making a call to our toll-free hotline, or sending a quick email to our coordinator email ID. Now, victims need to be very cautious with that, because a lot of this can be tracked by the abuser. So, it's difficult. It's not easy. You may want to go to a friend's house and make a call from there. So because that means, your abuser won't know that you made that call. So find a way to get help, whether it's with our organization, whether it's with the county organization, but please get help. That's the first step, is reaching out and trying to connect with an organization that can help you.
And I think a good point to make is that your organization, I'm sure that's why there's so much training involved, is to ensure that whatever communications you have with them, you don't inadvertently tip the abuser off by calling their home or anything like that.
Absolutely. So I'd like to just stress that, so our organization has a wealth of culturally specific information that we have gathered through experience, and not just experience, but because we're South Asians too, all of us. So, we have culturally specific expertise which can really help connect the client with county services. We can be that little bridge between a scared, lonely South Asian client and county services. So that's one thing we do. And I'm sorry, what was your original question? I lost my train of thought of it.
No, that's fine. So I was just, what are some tips that, in this situation that's so difficult for folks to reach out when your abuser is home all the time?
Right. So, So as I said before, best way is to try and find a way to use your friend's phone, or to you go outside and make a call, or reach out to us either by email or by phone.
So
And
let me interrupt you for a second. I'm sorry. Why don't you give us the website for your organization?
Sure. It's www.ASHA for women. And let me spell that. ASHAFORWOMEN.org.
Awesome. And do you have any events coming up?
No events, unfortunately. We have some Zoom events coming up. I think, Surur, you may be able to fill us in on that.
Yeah, we have a seniors Zoom event on November 22nd. And that's why we're going to try and hopefully start from November and do a monthly session for half an hour, 40 minutes, and just get seniors involved with fun activities and educate them about, various topics that they might find interesting.
And how do they find out or get the Zoom link for that?
So they need to email seniors@ashaforwomen.org and say that they're interested, and we will register them and send them out an email Zoom link.
That's great. That's awesome. I think that's fantastic to have seniors virtual events. Okay, so unfortunately, as fascinating as and important this is, we are running out of time. That happens to us every week. But I would like to thank you, ladies, and I'd like to thank ASHA for Women for all the hard work and dedication you guys have done for the welfare of South Asian women, children. And I'd like to thank my audience. Thank you so much for joining us today. And you can see us on Channel 21 on Montgomery County Cable, or you can see us on YouTube. If you're going to check us out on YouTube, you got to check out Yesterday, Today, Tomorrow show. You got to make sure you have the show at the end. If you like the show, don't forget to like us, tag us, and all that social media stuff. Until next week, I'm Mariana Cordier. Thank you for joining us.